Hey, what's up guys? This is 3D Bonfire back with an amazing tutorial. This time we will play with spheres. So you can see here are a lot of spheres on this image, and basically what we will do is we will throw one sphere from the top, which will collide with a surface. While this is happening, we will have some impact animation and some beautiful surface deformation. So you can see this is really penetrating the sand here. And while all of this is happening, we will emit like 1,000,000 of particles, which will be rendered as spheres. So all about spheres here. This close-up looks super nice, right? So you can see lots of different spheres. Spheres. How often can I say this word? Also, this looks beautiful. Lots of balls here. We have a little bit advanced effect here, so you can see all of these balls are penetrating the floor and will have a surface effect on it. So this is beautiful. Yes, nice stuff. So I just played with the shading and the colors. New tutorial, you are watching it right now, so you are on the safe side. This is the hardware preview with all of the X-Particles rendered as dots. But we will exchange them in render with beautiful spheres or balls or whatever. Of course, you can use this effect also just with the surface deformation to exchange textures. So you can see what is happening here is some texture exchange plus some displacement around the border. So also beautiful. You can use it with less spheres, with a lot of them, and just go with the surface deformation effect. So this is also super beautiful. So you can see you can reveal something beneath another texture like sand. So I like this one. Beautiful colors. And of course you can use different emitters. So in this case I think I use like 4 emitters with different sets of particles. So you will have bigger clones, smaller clones, medium-sized clones. And for example in this case I just render small particles. By the way, this is the shattered sphere, which will collide with the surface, so you can mix all of this to get beautiful effects. So I think this is quite stunning, and why don't we watch some videos? Alright guys, what do we have here? Alright, we have a beautiful animation with beautiful sound. Sound is by UN Studios in Graz. They helped me with this one. Maybe we just play it without sound from now on. So what we will achieve here, we throw a ball from the top, it will collide with the surface, we have a beautiful surface deformation and a shock wave, and while all of this is happening, we will emit from different emitters, I would say like 1,000,000 of clones. And this effect wouldn't be half as good without the surface deformation. So without this displacement here around the corner, around the edge, this effect wouldn't be half as good. So you will definitely need this one to make it physical and believable. Alright, so I did different versions. I played with the colors. I just wanted to see what is the best result. So this is also quite beautiful. This is the look with only the hardware rendering. So these are my X-particle particles, which will be rendered as spheres. Here I changed it more into a moon scenery with different colors. This is also super beautiful, so I like this one. And of course you can decide how big your particles should be. So here we only emit small particles, which feels more like a little dust or something. So you can see big spheres, small ones. Alright, okay. And of course, as I said, you can only use the surface deformation without the particles, which is also a super beautiful effect. And now I think we just should go into Cinema 4D and do it. So finally we are in Cinema and we actually do the work, right? So I already prepared something for you. Let's just quickly go through it. It's a little bit laggy. I only have 3 1080 Ti cards. Maybe you have more or less. But previous, it's okay. So you can see I throw down this ball, it collides with the surface. We have some beautiful surface deformation here, some impact, and we clone multiple spheres. So maybe I just go back one more time. So you can see this is the ball at frame 10, I think. There should be a collision. So yes, maybe when I deactivate these ones, so you also can see the ball is shattering here. We have some surface deformation, and with it, we clone or we emit multiple spheres from different emitters. So maybe I just go down a little bit further in timeline. You can see, so we have the yellow ones, I call them burst. So these are the initial ones. They will be thrown up. They have less gravity than the other ones and they will disappear. So this is just for the effect. And we also have blue ones. These are the big ones here. And they will have something special. So they will, when they collide, they will spawn red ones. So we also have some spawning system here. And all together, this is the effect. So you can see here, when blue ones collide, they will introduce even more particles, the red ones. Little explosions here and there whenever they collide. So this just makes it more interesting. And we are already through the scene, so this is what we will talk about now. So let's go through the setup. Here, first I have a falling ball, so this is quite self-explanatory. You can see it here. This is the ball which collides with the surface. For now, I just switch these ones off so we can see it better. So you can see, I throw down this ball, it collides, shatters, and disappears. Sorry for the loud mouse clicking. I just, my Wacom doesn't work right now. So maybe one more time. So you can see, I just let it disappear quickly. And the truth is, maybe I just show this one. Go down to my surface. Let's deactivate this one. Let's go back here. So I let it actually collide with just a little piece of polygons here. So this is just some extracted polygons from my surface. And I let it collide here. These ones, they should lay a little bit down. And all the other ones, they just disappear. So this is just what I wanted. I don't need all of them. So I let it just collide with a little patch here. I also tried it with a little bit more surface, that I have more of them laying around, but I didn't really need that. So this is all I did here. The setup is not so complicated and we don't really need to talk about it. It's just some Voronoi fracture. So you can already see the pre-cuts here. And when it collides, it will shatter. Just quickly, so this one, of course, it needs a dynamic body tag, and the surface needs a dynamic body tag with, where is it? So with dynamics off, so it's just a collider. And here in the Voronoi, you can set how many cuts you need in your sphere. So how many pieces should it be scattered? All right. Next one is the twister. So this is not really the topic of this tutorial. It's just this ridiculous object here. I'm not sure if we need to talk about this one. It's just a couple of platonics, right? With different materials on it. So you can see this one. I already used them for the particles, and just to match the color scheme, I just put it also on this little twister. And I just used different vibration tags on it. But I think this is not the topic, so let's go on to the X-Particles system. So this is your main interest, right? Let's see what is happening here. Alright, sorry guys, one last thing before we go into the X-Particle system. We have in the scene objects, we have a surface, okay? So we will use this one as a collider for our particles. And this is important, so before your particles are cached, so I already cached them to have a faster playback. But while you are working in the scene, you should keep your surface segments like 100 by 100 or maybe even 300 by 300. So you can see this is quite dense already, but calculation times with collider tags in X-Particles are quite fast. So maybe you get away with 300 by 300, but don't go up to 1000. So I would just increase this density for rendering when you do your final render to get the maximum amount of details, but while you are working, keep this a little bit low. Also, you can see that on the surface you need the X-Particles collider tag and use bounce and friction to your liking. So if you don't want to have your balls or spheres roll down the hill, I would say increase the friction, for example. So I keep it at 100 to keep them more in a static place. So you will play with these values. Also important is, so in your emitters, I will talk about later, in the extended data, you also can set the friction and bounce for each individual emitter. So play also with these ones. So for example, I felt like the blue ones, the initial particles, they roll down too much the hill. So I increase the friction, for example. So you should play with these values. Maybe one more thing about the surface, and I have to apologize because it is a little bit complex. Please bear with me. I give my best here. So we have a surface here. And maybe I just go quickly out of the camera. And the thing is pretty simple. So I have two displacers in it. Without it, it just would be a plane. I just typed in surface here. You have a tag on it, but this one, the displacer main, will help you to get some interesting shapes. So I think this looks way more interesting than the surface like that. Of course, you could sculpt something, but why don't you just use noises here? So I use a displacer with a height of 30. You can see with 10 it is more flat. So you can play with the values here and you can just put a noise in it. I use neutrals, and when I click through the seed, so you can see you get something procedural here, and I would keep this set up all the time procedural, so you can adjust this to your liking whenever you want to. So this is interesting. And there is also a displacer shockwave, and this one is using the material. It's called fill. So this is this one, the fill material. I will also talk about this one. So there is an animated texture in it. So it's just a white mask that is appearing. So I will also use this one just to quickly show you. It looks like that. And we will use this one with a displacer shockwave here to get this additional displacement. So I use a black and white mask or a texture to get this, this surface deformation. And inside of it, of course, you set it to minus. We set it to 10, then it would be something like this. So, but we want to have an indent here. All right, so these are the secrets behind the surface. And now I think it's really time to go into the system. All right, this could be interesting. The X-particle system, I just open it here and give me a little preview. So you can see I have different emitters. Maybe we just start with the burst one, with the yellow one, isolate it. So you can see this is going up, just go out of the camera. So we have some of them will go up, then fall down and disappear. So we have some power here. This is cool. One more look. This is how it goes. All right. So I just need to think about this one. So we have an emitter. We have different modifiers for this one. So I just increase the space here. So I have a lot of modifiers, but not all of them are working for all the emitters, right? So you can see this one, for example, the modifiers I exclude the particle-to-particle collision. This is an object we have, let's see, in the dynamics. So particle-to-particle collision is a little bit calculating intensive. So when you do it for 1,000 or 100,000 of particles here, this should slow down your simulation quite heavily. Or maybe not so much, but you don't really need it for these little particles. So I just deactivated it. So I don't need this one, and I don't want the general gravity, which works for the other particle systems. But for this one, you can see I have a special one. It's called gravity burst. So this one includes the normal gravity and the particle-to-particle collisions, but it has all the other effects active. So it also uses the kill, the scale, it uses the gravity burst and the turbulence. All right, so the special thing here with the gravity burst is we want these particles to go up higher than the other ones and fall down. The other particle systems, they more or less will stay on the ground. But here we want to have some initial burst, some energy, throwing them up and disappear. This is why I have a special gravity burst object here. And the trick here is, so you can play with the gravity strength. I put it to 1500, and this will just be how fast, how strong the gravity is affecting your particles. When you put it to 10,000, I don't think they will raise up that high, so they will just go whoops and go down. This one, you just have to play with it. The interesting thing here is, what makes it special is the mapping, all right? So the gravity strength will increase over time. So we have a maximum age here of 40 frames, and since I only use the space up till here, so like 0.3, I think this is more like 13 frames or something when you have all power of the gravity. So we start with 0 gravity, but really soon it will go to a full power effect and will put the particles back down. So this is actually what will throw them up. The gravity strength is rising and will put them back down. So you can play with the parameters here together with this one to get this effect. So this is super helpful here. Of course, I have some turbulence, so you just play with this one. These are quite generic and standard. I'm not even sure if we need the turbulence at all, but it just gives me the feeling of I have something special here, some turbulence that is mixing it up. All right. We also have a scale effect, and this one is saying, okay, what is happening here? So change value over time. All right. Over time, we change this one, and we change the radius minus 0.1. So do we have a mapping? No, we don't. So we start with a particle radius of 1, but since, so I will also talk about this one, they are all in groups. This one is in the burst group, and I think the radius here will override the radius in your emitter. So I have this one at 1, but the real radius of it would be 1.7 with a variation of 0.25. Okay, so we subtract this radius and put it down to 0 with the scale effect. And this is happening here, so you can see all of this radius will go down to 0 with a variation. And yes, so before they will disappear, they will scale down to 0. And that is just a more beautiful effect than just let them disappear. So if you want to have that professional look, use the scale effector. And of course, it's always useful to have a X-particle kill effector here. So in this case, it is not really necessary, but if you have some particles that go really wild or falling through the floor, so you can see the simulation is not perfect, some of them will fall down. You can, just to make calculation times faster, put a container around your scene, let them just kill your particles, so simulation is faster. Alright, since this is not an After Effects beginner's tutorial, I won't focus so much on this one because it's super boring, but maybe I just give you some quick tips how to do this. So I use this one as an emission texture, and you can see I have just a white solid with a black background. Alright, I use turbulent displacement twice and a radial blur. So without it, you can see it looks like this. It's just a mask with some keyframes, but you can make this way simpler. So I just animated my points here. So I just have some keyframe animations here. I also use the feathering, so you will get some smooth edges, some nice fading around the border, and I use mask expansion to basically blow it up. So you can see when I go here and set a keyframe, you can fill it with color. So use these parameters to make your explosion. And you can also see with the turbulent displacement, it's just really basic here. So I put this one on it and I use the second one to get finer details. Check my settings. So these are the settings, and I use a radial blur. Let's see if this is even doing something. Yeah, just a little blur effect here. So this is not really important. So you can see this is quite simple to make, and I would encourage you just to play with it and come up with your own emission texture. Okay, the interesting thing about the emission type is here we emit from the texture. And so in that case, it's not so obvious what is really happening here. So we just go to our surface and reveal one of these textures. And it is my texture called fill. It's this one. It's a black and white texture with a burst on it. So you can see this one, which looks already quite cool. This is my spreading or my surface deformation, or where I want to emit particles. So we will use a texture here. And basically, this is just in the luminance channel. It's an animated texture with 150 frames, but I also could put it down to 70 frames. So yeah, you need some animated texture here, preferably in black and white. So white is where stuff will happen, black is nothing. So let's go back to our emitter. So you can see this matches exactly our texture. This is super helpful to be precise and have some individual effects. So I emit from the texture. Then you just go to the texture tag. You drag your texture into it, your material. So drag this one here and set your emit channel to luminance, because we have it in the luminance channel. If you put it in color, you just tick the color checkbox. So this is quite simple, but the effect is amazing. In the emission, you set your birth rate to how many particles you want. I put it to 300,000, but you can go with 1,000,000 or something. This is not so render intensive. So yeah, just go crazy here. Oops, did I change it? All right, so the lifespan, I set it to 100 and variation of 10, but these values are not so important since we use a scale effector, which will scale them down before they really disappear with their lifespan. So this one, not so important. And we start our emission at frame 10. This is where our collision is happening and when our texture will be triggered. So you can see it starts at frame 10. So just to be on the safe side, I also put this one to 10. And I think this is all that I could say about the burst emitter. Maybe just go to the display so you can see you can change your icon color to yellow, use a yellow material, use a yellow group, just to have a good overview over your scene. You also can see in the groups, I put this one, so I create and add a group, I call it burst. So this one is in the groups burst. This is just for your general overview over the scene. It will help you to stay organized. And in the group settings for the group, you can set the radius of your particle. So I think this one will override the values in here. This radius will be overwritten by this one. And you can see I put it to 1.7 and a little bit variation. I think speed is not so important here. So this is everything I can talk about the emitter burst. Let's go on to the next ones. Alright guys, just a super quick intermission. So you are watching Play with Spheres Like a Pro Part 1, but Part 2, so you can see it here, will be Patreon exclusive. So If you become a patron of 3D Bonfire, you will get, where is it? You will get exclusive bonus tutorials for my Patreons. So if you want to see part 2, this would be the right place for you. Also, you will help me to do better and even more YouTube tutorials and also Patreon tutorials. So yeah, by supporting me, yeah, you do me and yourself also a favor. Also, you will get access to my tutorial scene files, selected ones. So this is also an opportunity to learn. And here are just some examples from my Patreon. So here is like the Liquid Donut Patreon bonus 2 lesson, or for example the Patreon 1 lesson for Liquid Donuts. Also I talk about future training, so if you think Dark Pokeball Thunderbolt training is the right training for you, this would be the place to be, right? So this is a future tutorial idea of mine. Also in part 2 we will talk about procedural ways to do texturing like this one, so to do something like a Voronoi pattern or something like stripes, even do it with displacement, so this looks quite stunning, right? Also to do simple ones like a basic checkerboard or something like this one. So to do this kind of texturing, this will be part of part 2. Also, I will show you the scene file, how to exchange textures here, do it with the correct displacement. So this one has a different displacement than this texture. So this is like a little bit a pro technique, but I will show you how to do it. You can also see it here. So exchanging textures, this is quite interesting. And of course, you will get one of my scene files. So I'm not sure which one it will be, but of course they are all quite similar. And yes, so you will get scene files too. So enough. Let's continue with part 1. And this is just something for part 2. So see you. All right, blue emitter. This one is called Emitter Initial. And just let me see what is happening here. So you can see the ball is colliding and is generating like 200 of these blue ones. You can see in the modifier this time I deselected some of them. So I exclude the gravity burst, which is an exclusive gravity modifier for the burst emitter. So that's why in this one I excluded the normal gravity, but in this one I exclude the burst emitter gravity. So yeah, this is self-explanatory, not too complex. And I also exclude the scale effect. So I don't want to scale them down over time. They should just stay in their size. So this is happening here. So this is simple. It also uses the same turbulence. It also uses a gravity, which is quite generic, so nothing special here. And it will also use the scale, the kill modifier around the scene. If some of these particles will fall down, they will be eliminated. So nothing too special about this one. Let's go back to our camera. This one is using also, so the initial one is also using the dynamics particle-to-particle collision. This one will prevent them from penetrating through them. So you can see this is like a safety zone around them. We'll just hold them back from going through each other. So you need this one. And yes, so this is a cool effect. And I think this is all I could say about the initial emitter here. Maybe we just go on. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's also check the emission type. So this is also emitting from the texture. And it also uses the texture on the surface. And it will also use the, oh, interesting. This is using the material fringe. Okay, so I also have another texture on it. Let's see. All right. So this one was the texture I called fill, but this one is just the fringe. So I only use this one to emit the blue particles. And this is also texture in the luminance channel, animated 149 frames, and just quickly see it. So in this case I use this texture. Alright, so when I go back here, this one is the material fringe, and it will emit particles, like I put it to 2000, but since this is over the whole area, what you really see are just maybe 200 or something like that. Alright, and they will stay the whole lifetime. So since our scene is only 70 frames long, they won't disappear, they won't scale down, they are here to stay. Alright, let's continue with the emitter spawning. And this is some part of the secret sauce here, so you can see the blue ones, whenever they collide, they will generate lots of red particles. So this will give you a little burst here and there, and will make your animation so much more interesting. Really love the look of this one. Maybe just render one frame, give it some time. My Octane license is not the newest one, and my graphic cards neither. Alright, there it is. So this is beautiful. And what can I say about this emitter? So this is something special. This emitter is emission mode controlled only. So you can see the other ones are emission mode rate, controlled only. So this is something special. And the secret behind it is, when you use your particle-to-particle collision dynamic effect, you can also use a spawning emitter. So this is what I do here. If you put this effect into your objects, you will have nothing here, but you can click on create, and then you will have an emitter, and you can call it spawning. Here you can say how many particles you will create on each collision, and I say spawn only once, so this will prevent your scene from getting too much overload, and yeah, keep it manageable. So I put this one to 40. And just a quick preview here. So this is beautiful, and these are enough particles for me. Also the spawning, let's see in the modifiers. So of course we deactivate the gravity burst, since we don't want to have them going up and down. We just use our general gravity on these ones. And we exclude the scale, because we want to have them permanent in our scene, so they shouldn't scale down or disappear. They are here also to stay. And this is the effect you get with these particles. So we have 3 emitters, and maybe one more tip here. So they all go to their group. So I create a group and call it spawning, create a group, call it burst, one for initial. So I have 3 groups here. This is just for the overview, and I think this was necessary also to go to my particle-to-particle collisions and groups affected. I just said this one only affects the group spawning. So these are the red ones and the blue ones, the initial ones. So only they will have particle-to-particle collision and not the burst ones. This one just helped me to prevent to have the effect also on the yellow ones, on the burst emitter. Don't know why. This was just necessary to keep calculations, not to go also on burst particles. So all in all, this scene is not so complex, but you can get really crazy effects with it. So I really like this one. And maybe we just continue here to go into the rendering part. So see you next with the particles and how to get them into your Octane viewer. Alright, so you want to render your particles with Octane. The simple way would be to go to your emitters, put an Octane object tag on it, and then activate particle rendering and set it to geometry. Here you can put particles in. So what I mean, you can put geometry in, like spheres, for example. So you can see, I don't know why this is so small right now. So I have initial particle 2, 1, and 0. So these are these 3 particles. I call them burst, so this is quite clear where they will go. I put them here, and I think you can keep them all on a radius of 1. This will make clear that, let me see, in your group you have a radius of 1.7, and I think, not quite sure, but when you just put geometry on it and leave it with 1, this will just be exact the radius you have in your group, and so you have crystal clear collisions on the surface. So when you put some values in here like 2, I think this works like a multiplier, or then your spheres, your rendered particles will be too big and will go through the floor. So I would say keep this at 1, and actually the radius you will get with them is, where is it? It's this one, with a little bit of variation. So all of them have a radius of 1, different colors on them. So when I activate these ones, you can see they will be exchanged with my real particles with different colors. Material is pretty simple, it's just a shiny material with some different tones of yellow. So this is beautiful. Let's go on to the initial particles. Let's activate them. Alright, these are the blue ones. And of course here you also have the tag, and you put your initial particles in here. So you can see these are these ones. Let's go on to the next one for the spawning. The yellow, no, I'm sorry, this is the color red, and these ones will live in here. So super simple, and this is all that I can say about particle rendering. Okay guys, I think these are all the secrets about this scene. So you can see it's not so complex. When you just have a clear overview, go through it, everything is quite simple when you just have the understanding, right? So I hope I explained this to you in a way that you grasp all the details and can work with this one. Super amazing technique, please play with it and have fun. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching my YouTube training part 1 of becoming a Spheres Pro. Part 2 will be Patreon exclusive, so you can see 3D Bonfire is also on Patreon. Do me and do yourself also a favor by following me here. It's not so expensive, so for $5 a month you can help me to do better and more YouTube training. Also, there will be exclusive bonus lessons for my Patreons, and you will get access to my scene files. So I think this is quite a good offer. Maybe just check it for 1 month, see if the content fits you. So there's quite a lot going on here. And of course, you also can see me on Instagram. So my name is Markus Gonza. There you can see how ideas translate into tutorials. So I guess you already know the liquid donut tutorial on YouTube. Here, this is what we talked about at this time. So playing with spheres. This is also a tutorial of mine. So lots of cool stuff going on here. Maybe come to follow me or have a chat. And of course, thank you also for following me on YouTube. This is amazing so far. So I just love to do that stuff. And yeah, I'm just really thankful. So thank you so much, guys. See you next time. Goodbye.